Hello and welcome to a new episode of the Yarnflakes podcast. My name is Audrey. I am a knitwear designer from the southwest of France, and this is a podcast where I talk about all that I am making. Thank you so much for joining me for this new episode. I hope you're well. You may hear that I have a rather unpleasant voice, more than usual. I have been sick, so I am much better. But it's still a little bit difficult. So you might hear that I'm a bit stuffy and there might be some interruptions for me to breathe. So yeah, I apologize if that's a bit annoying, but that's life. I have an episode with quite a few garments only to share this time, and two of which are green and v-neck, so yeah. Most of them are summery knits, with one kinda exception. And yeah, I am going to start, so you can find timestamps to all the different sections of the podcast in the description down below. So if you want to skip anything, find a project in particular, feel free to look at this. I also put links to everything that I talk about, the patterns and the yarns that I will be mentioning, as well as links to my social media and my patterns, which are for sale on Ravelry and Payhip. So I'm going to start with what I'm wearing, which is a new design that I just published. This is the Telesto design, and it comes in a bunch of different variations. I am wearing the t-shirt. So it is knitted top down. You start with the saddle shoulders, which are, as you can see, worked in this lace motif. So you make the rectangle basically in lace, and this lace is charted and written, so you have written instructions. It is not necessarily a super complicated lace. I'd say it's mostly intermediate. You only have lace on the right side, so you don't have any yarn overs and decreases on the wrong side. You just do net purls and twisted stitches basically. And you have video tutorials in the patterns for the couple special stitches, so mainly the bubbles and the mock eyelet, which you have here on the sides as well. And yeah, so it is not necessarily intuitive. Like I said, it's not difficult to knit, but it does require a bit of attention to set it up. So depending on how comfortable you are with lace, it might require you to just focus for a little bit. But if you are making the version, the t-shirt, that's pretty much the main focus, the main difficulty of the garment, because the rest of the construction I have kept very basic, very simple, just so that you can focus on this. So once you've done the saddle shoulder, you pick up stitches here to work the fronts with the low v-neck, which for my t-shirt version I made quite loose, so you may see that I'm trying not to bend too much. And you do the same for the back, but with a rounded neck. You have on the armhole edges this garter stitch and slip stitch detail, which prevents things from rolling. Then you join in the round, and here comes one of the main options of this design, is that you can have an A-line shape. So I know it's not super obvious on me because it does match my body shape, but you have some increases here on the sides, which makes an A-line body. And then you finish with twisted ribbing, and you pick up stitches to finish the armhole, and you have a finishing detail, which is that you bind off purlwise. So you just pick up stitches and then you bind off immediately, working purl stitches. So you purl stitches and then you pass them over, and it creates this little purl line at the edge, which I personally really like. Same thing here, you pick up stitches, you work a little v-neck in twisted ribbing, and you bind off. And that's it. And that's it for the first version of this Telesto design, because you can also make it a sweater with sleeves. So I'm not going to change because I'm already struggling and just moving a little bit. So I'm going to insert a video of me wearing the sweater version so you can see how it is. So exactly the same thing, except you pick up stitches around the armhole to work the sleeves, and the sleeves are fitted with decreases until the cuffs, which are worked in twisted ribbing as well. And I have taken the opportunity to work the sweater with a straight body. So no increases, no A-line on the sweater. And I have also made the hem ribbing longer and the neckline higher. So I think the video might be finished now, but you have seen that the V-neck on the sweater version is a bit is less loose because I have worked it. I have worked more ribbing, and that's kind of what's fun about picking up for a V-neck, is that you can adjust it to your preference. You can knit more or less ribbing, and it sort of tightens the neckline the more ribbing you work. And so for a sweater version, I wanted to have it not as low as for the t-shirt. And all of these options are completely mixable. Like, you can mix and match however you want. You can have a straight t-shirt, you can have an A-line sweater, you can adjust the neckline however you want, including on the T version if you don't want it as loose as me. And yeah, the only pairing that is a bit required, I'd say, is if you are making the A-line shape, you should make a finer ribbing like I did here. Because if you make an A-line body and then you make a longer rib, you're gonna have something that does this, then this. And it's not going to have a nice blousey effect. It's not gonna be harmonious. It's just gonna look a bit weird. So, but beyond that, you can customize it to your liking. And yeah, so yarn-wise, it requires fingering to sport weight yarn. For the t-shirt version, I used Solo Lino by Lana Grossa, which I love. I absolutely love it. So this is the color 52. It is a bottle green, like perfect bottle green. I know that when I get closer, it looks a bit bluer, but it is green. This is a linen and linen viscose blend. And I think that even people who tend to not like plant fibers, I think you should try this because it is so nice. Look at that drape. It even has some elasticity. It is very soft, very pleasant in it, and it is super drapey and light. Yeah, I can't think of anything that you would not like about this yarn. It's very drapey, so maybe if you need something with lots of cable and that needs structure, like a proper sweater that needs to hold its shape, maybe. But besides that, it is absolutely lovely. And it even has a really good definition. I was a bit unsure how the bubbles would look in plant fibers, because bubbles need a little bit of stretch, right, to work. And I actually think they look fantastic. It's really fun. Really good definition on the lace. Really lovely drape, and it's very fresh to work. And they have a good range of color. It's a pretty affordable price, and they have a great range of color. I have it in burgundy, which is called Antique Red, I think. I have it in a light grey. I have plans to design with. I have it in blue as well. I really like it. And yeah, so this is the summer version. And for the sweater, I used Madeleine et Philibert's yarn, which is the French indie dyer. I used their Memo sock base, which is a merino and mohair blended yarn. So it's a fingering weight. And I really like these types of yarn because you have the nice shine and drape of the mohair with the interesting sheen and definition, and it gives a bit of a halo, but it's not too hairy compared to what it would be if I were to hold a proper fluffy mohair lace yarn. And yeah, I really like how it looks. It makes a bit more of a blurry, fuzzy lace, mostly because it's impossible to photograph or film in this color. This is the Alicante colorway, which is a really nice plum. It's absolutely beautiful. It's much darker, much more violet, eggplanty than what you see on camera. It's very difficult to photograph. And I highly encourage you to check out the testers versions because you can see how the lace looks in different yarns. Like I'm thinking of a version especially which is in a light gray yarn with a fantastic smooth definition, and you can compare with my more toned down. Basically the lace looks a little bit more subtle this way, which I like for a more easy to wear garment, but it's still really, really lovely. It's a little bit difficult to show because it relies on transparency, but yeah, that color is beautiful. The keyword is drape. You need a yarn that has drape, especially if you're making the t-shirt version, because you need the shoulders to fall properly. If you have a yarn that's a bit too stiff, and especially if your shoulders are not sloping, you might have something that stands a bit stiff here, upright, whereas you need it to fall. It's also true for the sweater. So for the sweater and the t-shirt, the ease recommendation is about the same, but what changes is whether you're making an A-line or a straight body. So there is an option to make short row bust darts on the front. If you are someone who notices that your tops or sweaters tend to ride up thanks to your breasts, basically, you have on the body short rows to prevent that. It's in the pattern. I don't necessarily recommend making the bust darts if you're making an A-line. We have tried this with some of my testers on previous designs, and they found that it was pretty redundant, basically, because since you're adding a lot of fabric already by making the increases, you don't necessarily need to work the short rows. So if you're making the A-line, you do need to have no ease or even a negative ease at the bust, because you're gonna increase anyway. So if you're planning an A-line body, do not pick too much ease, because you're gonna have something that's way too loose here. There's lots of room on the upper shoulders. So if you pick something that's too big for the A-line, it's gonna be way too big. On the contrary, for the sweater, pick more ease. Pick about, not for the sweater, for the straight body, pick more ease. Pick 10 to 15 centimeter, which is 4 to 6 inches, positive ease at the bust, because if you have a body that is too close to your bust measurement, you're gonna have nice roomy shoulders, and then the body is gonna be tight, which is gonna look a bit odd. So A-line body, no ease, and straight body, 10 to 15 centimeter, 4 to 6 inches ease. That's it. It's written in the pattern and on the pattern page as well, in case I made a mess and it's not clear. But no matter which option you choose, I recommend that you pick a yarn that has some drape. Something with tencel will work really well, BFL, something with silk. Plant fibers work fantastically. You just need to find something that looks nice in the lace, and yeah, that's it for this design. I hope I didn't forget anything, and I hope you enjoy it. If you do, it's currently available on Ravelry and Payhip, and it has a little discount for the release on Ravelry with the code Telesto. You have 15% off until Sunday. I just realized this morning, you're seeing this normally on May the 4th, right? I did not intend to release the pattern with the moon name, specifically on May the 4th, but I thought that was kind of funny. So that's it for Telesto. And I'm going to move on to a finished object because I have completed another V-neck green top, which is my Rockhound vest. This is a design from Woolen Pine Designs, which is a duo of American knitwear designers and crochet designers. I think they make crochet as well. And it's finished. So I loved this project. It was absolutely a joy to knit. This is typically the type of texture panel using twisted stitches, small twisted cables, mock cables, which is so immersive for me to knit. It doesn't require a lot of attention, but it still is very fun and engaging. And so it's worked top down with the V-neck, and you have the panel on the back as well. And there you go. So I knitted this in Katia Coton Cashmere yarn, which was my first time trying this yarn. I'm looking for a good fingering weight cotton, and this is one that I wanted to try. It is, I think, 90% cotton, 10% cashmere, and it was really pleasant to knit. It's the nicest cotton I ever knitted with because it is very soft. It is very drapey for a cotton. It was really pleasant to work with. It has a fantastic definition and it's quite drapey. It's not as light as this because this is just perfect, but it still falls pretty well. So I mentioned in the previous episode that I had some roll gauge not issues, but my roll gauge was much denser than the pattern. So the pattern is initially written with a wool yarn in mind. So I wanted to make it as a summer top, so I wanted to use a plant fiber, but my roll gauge was much smaller. So I would have ended up with a very small arm hole. Because the thing is, this design relies on a number of rows instead of centimeters. That's because of the V-neck, right? When you have a V-neck with a pattern like this, well, either you have a pattern that is super easy to modify and you have to modify it on your own according to the decreases or the increases of the V-neck, or you need to have a chart with a fixed number of rows so that you set up the increases in the pattern. And this is the case here. So, but because I had a different row gauge, well, I wouldn't have gotten the proper armhole depth if I had followed the pattern immediately, exactly. And I didn't want to modify the chart myself because the pattern is fully charted, like you have a chart for each front with the increases set up in the pattern perfectly. And yeah, not a problem for the back because I could add the extra length, the extra rows that I needed before the armhole increases here. But on the front, I ended up adding length here on the shoulders. So I knitted in stockinette for a longer time before starting the V-neck and the pattern. So I have a straight bit in the shoulder here, and I was afraid it was going to look weird because I had a different proportion of the pattern and the stockinette at the top, but I think you can barely tell the difference compared to the sample from the original design. So I'm happy with that because I was able to make the armhole ribbing and the long V-neck rib, because that's a feature I really liked about this design, is the larger rib edgings, and this way I have the correct fit. However, My stitch gauge was correct in stockinette, but it was not in the texture motif. I realized when I tried it on that it was very fitted instead of having quite a lot of ease, as it was planned with the size that I knitted. So I'm going to insert a video of me wearing it here so you can see how it looks. I did want to try and see if I could catch up the ease. So I stretch it when I block it, I pinned it. I noticed when I pre-blocked the back to check the measurements that the yarn wasn't moving at all. Cotton sometimes tend to grow a lot with weight and water, so I wasn't quite sure what I could do. So I pinned it and I stretched it width-wise as much as I could to try and get the ease that I was supposed to have. And this is not something that I would do with wool because it's kind of pointless. From my experience, unless it's a wool that is very drapey, or it's a single yarn, for example, which tends to spread quite nicely. Other types of wool, they're just gonna bounce back because they're elastic and they have memory. And so even if you try and stretch to gain a little bit of length or width, it's gonna come back anyway. But I'm not so sure what's gonna happen with cotton. So I tried and I stretched it, and now I think I have a bit more ease than pre-blocking. And I am going to wear it a lot and test the yarn, because that's the thing. It was super fun to knit with. It has a great definition. I like how it falls, but I need to see if it's nice to wear even when it's really hot. Breathing interruption. My nose is so red. Yeah, I need to see how it wears in the heat, because the thing is, it's so soft that I'm kind of not sure how fresh it's going to feel, because it kind of feels a bit like it has a bit of a halo. And so I'll see if I can wear it when it's very hot, when it's gonna be like 40 degrees in 2 weeks. No, I'm not. We actually have been lucky and we have some nice rain, and also I'm not complaining. Everything's great. Just stay like this. But yeah, I want to see if it doesn't feel a bit too clingy, which can happen with yarns that are very soft and squishy. So yeah, I will see, and I will report back if I remember, and letting you know how it feels for me as a summer top. But very pleasant in it. This is the colorway number 79, I think. I think it's called Pine Green. The thing about Katya is I noticed that their colors appear very different on the website than what they really are. And like, this depends on your screens, the setting on your screens, the luminosity, if you have the blue light filter on, the different variations and saturations, etc. But I've noticed with Katya, like, no matter the screen, I've used it on different devices, and it's not something that I usually have a problem with other brands. So yeah, if I notice it with Katya, it's kind of the odd one for me. They do tend to have colors that are very different from the screen than from what it really is. This, for example, appeared much darker than it actually is. And this is more like a prairie green, which is lovely. But I just wanted to give you a heads up in case you're looking for a very specific shade. I noticed personally that the way the colors show from the Katya website isn't really accurate for me. No matter the device, no matter taking into account those yeah, screen details, but yeah, that's the thing. And that's it for this finished project, which was really pleasant to knit. The pattern is super clear. Yeah, no hand holding, but still everything is written out. You don't need to guess anything, and it's great. I have a work in progress, which I want to share as well. And it is another summer top. It is the Baigneuse top from Atelier Émilie, which is a French designer, but she publishes her designs in English as well. And yeah, she has this top. I've already knitted it last year, I think. And it's a sleeveless top, which kind of like a, not racer back, but still a little bit open armholes here. And it's a shape that I really love to wear. And I have made one already in a Tencel Merino blend, which in a dusty pink, which I love to wear now under shirts, etc. It's great for the spring or autumn. But I wanted to make another version for summer, in a summer yarn. So I am using Katja again in their Tencel cotton base. So this is 67% Tencel, which is the cellulose synthetic bamboo viscose copy fabric, and 33% cotton. And I got this because I have a t-shirt that I knitted last year as well in this yarn, and I love it. It is so pleasant to knit. Even though this is a DK weight yarn, it has 120 meters per 50 grams. Even though this is DK, I was able to wear it even when it was really hot in the summer. It's just, yeah, it's a thicker fabric, especially since my t-shirt is cabled, but it's so fresh somehow. I really liked it, so I knew it would be a good thing for this kind of top that I want to wear in the summer. And see, I got the light gray color. It looked light gray. It's color 28. It looked almost like a pearl gray on the screen, and it's more like we say mouse gray in French. Elephant gray, perhaps? No, elephant gray is much lighter, I think. Anyway, oh god, you know, I realized yesterday, I'm almost 31 years old. I realized yesterday that camel, the color camel, was because of the camel. I didn't. I know what a camel is. That's not the problem. It's just that I thought it was just a word like red or blue or green. You know, I didn't think that it was a color that was named after something. I didn't make the connection between camel the color and camel the animal. It's just that I ordered yarn from La Rosa, I think, and the camel colorway was translated into chameau, which is the French for camel. And I was like, oh, that's funny. I've never heard that for a yarn color, and I didn't realize that it was camel the animal, and that's why the color camel is called camel. You learn so many things. You know, what was it last time? Like, I often have those things that I realize, like, you know, you have a illumination, you're like, that's why. Like, when you see sometimes the logos of some companies, it's not very clear what it is. It's like when you see that the arrow of Amazon is a smile, you know, you don't immediately see it, and a lot of people realize it years later, and it's like, oh, well, I kind of had that with the camel thing. Anyway, great, not camel, great. But yeah, so the Baigneuse top, really simple, really straightforward. You work the back, you work increases for the armholes, you pick up stitches for the front, so it looks a bit silly now because I don't have any of the ribbing. You work a tiny bit for the front, neck, armhole, and now I'm in the round and I'm just knitting. So yeah, it's just fun. It's just fun to work because the construction is such that you have quite a big portion of increases for the armholes, so it's not like you have one part of the pattern that takes very long. Even though it's just stockinette, I don't get bored because it's just, I knit a little bit for the back, then I make the increases, then I make the front. It's just broken down into different steps, and so it's a little bit more motivating for me. And I haven't worked on this a lot. I've only been knitting this when we've been watching shows and films with my partner, and so I'm still surprised at how much I have done. I'm still going to work a little bit on the body before trying it on, because I want to see if I can make it a bit looser than my previous one. So my first one, I have a slightly denser gauge than what the pattern's called for. So the one that I already have is very fitted, which I love. It's really nice to wear now. And here I have a bit more of I have the same gauge as the pattern, so it should be a little bit looser. And I want to keep that because, well, there's less stretch because it's not wool, right? And so I might want to pick up more stitches for the armhole ribbing edges here. So instead of picking up 2 out of 3 stitches, I might pick 3 out of 4. So if you don't know about ratios, it's because stockinette, right? Most knitting fabrics, they have a different width to height ratio. So you usually in stockinette have a third more rows than what you have of stitches. Usually. So that's why when you pick up stitches to knit in a different direction, so you see I've been knitting this way and I'm going to pick up stitches to knit this way, I want to have the same measurement. So say there's 20 centimeter here lengthwise. When I'm going to knit this way, I want 20 centimeter here normally. The thing is, you have a bit of wiggle room, which is great about knitting and picking up stitches, is that you can tighten things or you can make them a little bit fluffier and like fan out, make ruffles, for example. But if you don't want to modify the measurement, you can't pick up every stitches because you're gonna have something too wide. You need to respect the gauge ratio. And in stockinette, it's usually 2 stitches for 3 rows. That is when you don't want a specific measurement. That's why sometimes we talk about ratios. But when you want a specific number of stitches, you can't really think in terms of ratio. Sometimes I have the case during testing or people who are knitting my patterns, sometimes they ask me what ratio do I pick up stitches, because I will just say pick up X stitches, for example, to make sleeves. I'm going to say you need to pick up X stitches because you need to pick up X stitches. And the thing is, sure, usually it's 2 out of 3 for stockinette, but it varies between person to person, and if you're using a different type of yarn, you may have a completely different row gauge. And so if I tell you to pick up 2 stitches out of 3 rows and you've made 100 rows to reach the measurement that was required, it's not the same as if you've made 80 rows. You're not going to have the same number of stitches, and so you're going to be confused. So when the important thing is the number of stitches, for example, when you need a certain upper arm circumference, you need a certain number of stitches. And you can pick up more or less stitches to sort of fix your row gauge difference. And this way it doesn't matter, but you need to pick up the right number of stitches. And so in that circumstance, I don't really like to think about picking up ratio because it doesn't really match to the reality. But sometimes the number of stitches doesn't matter, and that's the case here. Like I'm not making sleeves, so I don't need it to be a specific measurement. So even if I don't have the right row gauge, it doesn't matter. I just want it to stay about the same opening. So in this case, I can think ratio wise. And I think I'm going to try to pick up more stitches, so 3 out of 4 instead of 2 out of 3. The way you do it is that you see you have your edge here where you can see the stitches, and you pick 2 and you skip 1. You pick 2, you skip 1, or you pick 3 and you skip 1 if you want 3 out of 4. So I'm gonna try and do that. I don't know if it's not gonna flare out. I'll see. But yeah, kind of things about picking up ratios. Also, you can change the ratio. You're not obligated to always pick up at the same rhythm. If you notice that you just are missing a little bit of stitches, you're at the end and you're missing a little bit of stitches and it doesn't match the ratio, you just fudge it. It's fine. It's knitting. It's gonna live its life and it's gonna smooth any small things like this. So yeah, I think I will make the neckline first. I remember when I made the other one that I needed to tighten my bind off at the back of the neck here, because it's straight. You see, the back is knitted straight. I usually tend to prefer when there is back neck shaping, like to make a little bit of a curve, especially for cardigans, but that's also the case for tops. But this one, it's so small, like the ribbing is so small that it actually fits really well. It doesn't like flips over the back of my neck, so that's great for this. But I do need to make sure that the neck falls like I want it to. And yeah, I will make the neckline and then try and see if I can keep things a bit looser, because I would like it to be not as tight. We'll see how it goes. But yeah, this is what I've been knitting. This is what I've been designing, and that's it for this episode. Yeah, thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed despite the interruptions, and you're lucky because I recorded the French version of the podcast before and I was interrupted like so many times. Like I had delivery coming, I had my sister losing the insurance paper for her car, then finding it again, then having to breathe. So yeah, you only had minor inconvenience compared to the French podcast. But yeah, I hope you enjoyed. I am going to end on the note about Patreon. So I'm done with the knitting. If you're not interested about the Patreon chat, thank you so much for watching. But I have a Patreon page where you can support me and my design, like me, not just me, my work. This is a way for you to buy the knitting patterns. Basically, you get 1 or 2 patterns per month of your choice. And there are also specific content for Patreon. So there are creative vlogs. There are also once per month, there is a specific video of a various type. Like some are behind the scenes designs. For example, in June, there will be a video on the entire process of designing the Telesto design. So from knitting to writing the pattern to testing to release, etc. That will be for June. But there are also some more technical chat about technique, colorworks, yarns, cables, etc., lace. And this month, for May, the video is about increases. So I've made a few short tutorials. It's a really quick video about increases, showing different kinds of increases, in which situation they're good, which ones lean left, which ones lean right. And yeah, that's it. This video is available for Patreons from the level 2, so it's €5 plus VAT wherever you live, depending on where you live. And yeah, so if you are interested, I would love to see you over on Patreon. When you join, you actually have access to all the previous content from the previous years. So there's now over 40 videos. These videos are recorded in French, but they're subtitled in English. And yeah, this is also where you can find the codes to have the free patterns, and the call for testers as well are there. And yeah, thank you so much for watching the podcast. Thank you so much for your support, whether Patreon or just watching the podcast. I've been making the podcast for a long time now. I've been designing for over 6 years, and the podcast is not much older, but is older than that. And it's always nice to read some comments. I know it's a bit confusing having the two languages on the channel, but yeah, that's how it is. And I'm always very grateful to be able to chat to people about knitting and all the creative people who make patterns and yarns, etc. So yeah, it's always nice to hear from you. I don't always have time to respond to comments, but I do leave a little heart so you can see that I read it. And I'm always very grateful. I've recently had some really nice messages from people about the podcast, and I'm super grateful. So I want to thank everyone for their kind words, and I'm just really happy that you're able to be entertained a little bit by the podcast, and yeah, that you're getting some inspiration from the knitting that I share. So yeah, I will see you again mid-May, hopefully with a better ventilation system than now. But yeah, thank you so much for watching. I wish you a very happy end of the day, evening, whenever you're watching this, and I will see you next time. Bye!